So we're talking about sexual energy, right? That the fact that it's been harvested, for me, it comes down to my own memory base as I'm going down, 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 back through the time tracks and remembering through my own body memories. All right, when the first insertions were put in and we started to be used as energy source for a being that is without source of itself. You can call it a predator or a parasite. And that being has grown in power, certainly in this quadrant of our galaxy right now, certainly on our Earth. And so most humans, okay, when we have a sexual encounter, that energy was, in biblical terms, was used to procreate, right? To make a baby. And those babies at this point in time on our planet are being used. They're bought from the minute they're conceived. Their life energy is being sold, right? Until we wake up to that fact, we need to really wake up to that fact, you know? So we do it mindlessly, unconsciously, and we provide a child to a system. Right now, so as more people wake up, we're revoking all of those contracts, we're revoking them, but they actually exist. They're written into the law that we are born into right now. So where I go, the next piece I go with the sexual energy is, at what point do we actually know where our sexual outputtings go? It's a huge release of energy. Any orgasm, be it a body orgasm, a mind orgasm, okay, is being, through contracts that we don't know that we made, utilized by this predatory force. And until we see it individually, until we get past that dark veil, right?
Right.
Until we know without a doubt where our energy is going. Like, we have control over that energy. That's sovereignty to me. But so that's why I said Loosh doesn't just depend on fear, it also depends on ecstasy, okay? It depends on high emotions, created emotions. Anything that can come in and create an emotion in us where we're in some sort of reactivity state is Loosh.
But at what point, you know, and what you just said, by the way, is so beautifully put and is so very important. But at what point along those lines do you feel that we do have some, I don't want to say the word control, but in if we are able to understand the output further along the lines of that initial sexual energy, if one was skilled, would it be possible for that individual to move that energy into a much more creative energy that would surpass the quote matrix that we're currently finding ourselves in?
Oh, I would agree totally, but that's the consciousness level of awareness that one is operating from, right? So I'm just talking about maybe you or I or Claudia sitting here listening and discussing this, but and this is where I start to move what you were talking about, 10th, 12th, 11th, 12th dimensions or densities. We can't move up into those realities until we have cleared out this space that we're in right now. So we are not able to do that until our consciousness literally expands into that space, right? And that means, you know, for me, this is a personal decision. You know, and it also has to do with my age and my own path and all the things, is that, you know, the sexual energy, I don't feel it I can feel sexual energy, all right? I can feel it, all right? But it's not going to be used from me any longer, right? So it stays within it's like my sphere expands with that energy, all right? I expand with it in a certain way. There is an aspect of creation to it that I can't really explain yet. So I feel those energies, but I'm just really speaking to them, you know, to the large amount of people that, you know, are having sex right now all over the place, right? And aren't aware of what is taking it up. I mean, most of the time it's Jehovah. If you wanted to put a name on it, because we're so locked down into a religious mindset, even if we say we're not Christian or we're not biblical or we're not, Jewish, we don't have that religion, that's been the primary entity. So, but that's me. That's my own assessment. I would call everybody to look at it themselves, track that energy.
Right. So here's the thing, and I wholeheartedly support that. And this is interesting that we really haven't gone down this avenue before in this sort of detail, because it's such an important piece. So I think I sent you a couple of months ago that one audio that my mom sent me about the difference between a soulmate and a twin flame and this kind of thing. So this is what's interesting when I start looking at the relationships that we've discussed, and the one that comes to mind is the one between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, right? Mm-hmm. And they were potentially a twin flame relationship. Some of the information I've been reading recently describes these twin flame relationships. And by the way, a twin flame in this concept is obviously different from that one piece that the other gentleman was describing. So a twin flame would be an aspect of that there is a male and a female here on the planet, and they share one higher self. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that would be the distinction between a twin flame and like a soulmate relationship, right? A twin flame shares the same higher self. Now, these are the pieces I've been putting together the last few weeks. So in a relationship like that, there is a very strong sexual energy that is created in a relationship like that. Now, when Mary Magdalene and Jesus had this relationship, what happens is as been told by other people, as to whether it's accurate or not, I could not speak to. But the story goes something like this, that both of those, both the male and the female aspect, have also 12 other parts that are connected to them that also come into this plane to support the union of that original twin flame, okay? So the female aspect has 12 counterparts. The male aspect has 12 counterparts. And isn't that very fascinating when you look at how the Bible is told, right? That there were 12 apostles, when we know that there were, as it's been told in other realms, it's 24. And isn't that interesting how we're starting to understand how religion has described this relationship potentially, or the alternative version of religion, and how other aspects that people are coming in to describe a twin flame relationship. So what a lot of people are saying is that twin flame relationships have come into the planet to template the planet, so that it's no longer about relationships. It's about like a shared mission of sorts, right? Mm-hmm. And our discussion is taking that one step further and saying, okay, let's really look at this piece. What everything manifests out of sexual energy, right? And one can choose to use that sexual energy in all sorts of different ways, and one can use it as a creative way to move past the current paradigm that we have been co-opted to supposedly believe in. But I feel that there is a way to use that energy in a very creative way to move past all of this. Okay. And that there are tools to do that. Mm-hmm. But obviously that is the very tail end of a very complicated process. I mean, it's the very, it's the end, it's the thing that.
Yeah, to speak to that, I've long held, okay, mm-hmm. It's 12, but it's actually 13.
Yes, it's 13 because you have to include you as yourself.
Okay, yes. So if we were to use the zodiac, or we were to use sacred numbers, okay, the completion of the self is through the 12.
Right.
Okay, so the number 13 comes very much into play, right? So if we were to look at disciples, archetypes, zodiac, constellations, it goes around, so. And it's also been, in my view, for the longest time that I've been, examining this, that to put together one being with 12, okay, the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles, or whatever, be they male or female, is virtually the one thing that's been kept from us. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I can't tell you how many times I've counted in my life, do I have 12 beings around me? And I've often thought, okay, I have no way to prove this, but it's come into my consciousness that this is how we are going to bring ourselves out of this game, is that we energetically unite and we bring one up that goes out, comes back, and brings out the next and the next and the next and the next and the next. Does that make sense? It's like, I feel like if we were to speak of Jesus as a avatar being that came onto the planet, not as pictured in the biblical descriptions, that when he, what we traditionally call the crucifixion or the resurrection, when he broke through the immortality codes, he left a path open, okay, an energetic path. And I'm not speaking about the biblical way of speaking of it. This is just my own interpretation. All right, he left a communion path open. All right, and it came back down to the earth body, which could be represented by her, the mother, or Magdalene, or Mary, or any of the female aspects. So somehow that relationship is informing us right now.
Yes, and it has been a piece that has come into my field in the last few weeks in a huge way, because it's almost like finding out how all those pieces you just described, come together, and then and is that a part of my unique path, or am I just investigating, that as one aspect of many paths? So I think the first question is that my path? Is that mine? Am I?
There's a primordial duality here. We can't deny that, right? There is a male, female. We can't deny that. We can't deny that we live in a duality. We can't, any of us, yesterday was a beautiful example of somebody pouring out art, was that pain and longing of her other half, okay, which was, hooked onto a being that she remembered, that she recalled life, she recalled children, she recalled a whole bunch of things. But we all have that in us, and that's the sort of like I say, get down to the root level of it, is that primordial split, right? That longing that we have, that we know that we're not complete. And that can be represented through, we're talking about Magdalene and Jesus because that's our current story, our current paradigm, right? Mm-hmm. But isn't that reflected throughout all of the stories?
Yes.
Right? So it's
yes. This is really interesting.
So I think the sacred marriage to me is the sacred chalice, or the sacred marriage is that alchemical part of myself. I'm married to him within me, and he would be married to me within him. Now, I'm not talking about just an individual person that's talking right now. I'm talking about alchemy, soul alchemy, the return to wholeness. That in some way can only be defined as no need for other.
And so how does one in this experience, in this unique incarnation, come to terms with that on a physical level?
Well, this is our biggest challenge. And I think we here are all very aware of that, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's the embodiment of that wholeness within this 3D reality, which is like the challenge of challenges, isn't it?
Right.
Could we have chosen anything more difficult? Was to bring these higher dimensional realities back down to 3D and clear out the field here.
Right.
So, it's an ongoing process. It's an unending, it seems like an unending process at some point.
And it would also give me great pause, because I would think that each of us would have a unique journey along those lines.
Of course, undoubtedly so. It's we're each individuated spirit, okay? Having an experience of evolution or recall or remembering, in some way, it doesn't even matter if we were evolved and we de-evolved and now we're evolving again. It doesn't really matter. Mm. What matters is that our conscious awareness state is evolving and expanding. I would say more than anything, expansion, right? So in the present I awareness, I avatar, I'm reclaiming my avatar self here in the 3D reality. It's hugely difficult.
Indeed. And if you were to take that discussion a little bit further along, let's say that that could manifest in the physical 3D realm as either just a relationship you had with someone that was a heart-opening relationship. That could be a relationship that is a soul mate type relationship. That could be a twin flame relationship, or all of these are just constructs too, you know. But at some level, one has to assign a name so at least we can have a dialogue about these different concepts, because they are very different. Each path is so unique, and one would have to find their path before they could really understand, you know, like if someone were a twin flame, they would have to know at some level they must meet that other piece. If someone that was in a soul mate type relationship, that would be very different. You know, they would how they would go about it, and how that would manifest on the physical plane would be a very different piece. And then and I think that those are two very unique groups. And then they're not any better. It's just a different experience. And then I would think that the vast majority of them, of the people here, are just coming here for the experience of being here, you know, not for these higher ordered understandings or relationships. And so you have all of these pieces mixing together, and it's so very complicated because one person's truth, you know, and their reality may be very different from someone else's. And so that's why that inner knowing and trusting that inner knowing is so important, because you may be sitting next to somebody who's in a soulmate relationship, or you may be sitting next to somebody in a twin flame relationship, and you're not going to agree upon what you've come to do, how you want to go about it, you know, because by design, your journeys are different.
Well, I would, you know, first, we can't help but be on a path. I mean, we're moving through space and time quadrants, so we are on a path of sorts, you know. And I agree. I you know, the whole work that we've been doing as a group for these years is our own knowing body, our own body of gnosis, which is unique to each of us. There's no, you know, I have no question or any conflict with that aspect of it. I only have, you know, the only piece that we continuously do is like, you know, really lifting each other.
Yes.
Right? I mean, really, truly, like getting to that place of, call it the unconditional love, call it mother love, okay? It's a very different aspect that's been so squashed, which we've shared so often, right? Of not being able to, you know, the female, feminine, the creation aspect, and allowing that piece to be the only piece that really matters, which is that free flow of love, right? That unstoppable dam, right? That really seeks out to hold, behold, and lift another in truth, your truth. You know, I mean, it's been the hardest thing for me in my own journey has been to understand that my truth wasn't everybody else's, but at some level it is. At some very, very essential level it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what's so beautiful about this space here is that, like you said, you know, that I don't know any other place, you know, or any other group of relationships of people together where this happens. That there is that trust and that support, and you know, and that's so very powerful, because as we all grow individually in those pieces, we bring those pieces back, you know. That's what we do. We bring them back, and then the rest of the group builds on it. So let's go back to this piece about understanding the power of the sexual energy. And because I really feel that if, you know, we talked about earlier, if you want to go out there, move past the stars, be outside of this matrix that's been designed, I think that's the way to go about it. And boy, that's a tricky path. I'm sure there are so many people out there who are much more well-informed and skilled in terms of this, but I will say at an intuitive level, I think that we are all masters at this, and that if we have that within, if that is a part of our path, that if we take responsibility in our life to clear all that crap that we've moved through, that we will be in that space to know how to navigate through those realms. And I think that those realms can only truly be navigated by your own authentic knowingness, not from deriving pieces from other people and trying to apply that into your path. It has to be yours. You have to own it. It has to come from within.
Mm-hmm. And you said it. I mean, and this is a confrontation that we're actually under, is the cleaning out of the crap, right? I mean, it's that confrontation, okay, of the light field with the dark field that confronts within each of us. And only you will know you, and only I will know I, and only Claudia will know Claudia, because that's the art, and yet wherever there's crap, we're the first ones that have to see it, right? Ourselves. I mean, we just do. We have to clear out the ego fields. We have to clear out the past harm. We have to clear out, things that we did without our consent, right? I mean, there's so many layers to this that, undo the contracts, disengage ourselves from the predator. And until we actually are clear of that, it will track with us.
Yes.
And I do, somebody, I can't remember who it was, said 51%, I think it was my friend Joanna. It's like once we get to the 51% clear stage, now we have a chance. Now we have an ability to have an awareness factor, perceptual reality, that we can always be watching ourselves in the play. It's not enough just to see the play. We also have to see ourselves and how we're participating in it, whether we're being used or we're actually operating from clear consciousness.
Yes, and I think that is part of the dance of duality, is knowing both of those pieces.
Right, but it is, we really look out into our world, and our world informs us, right? What's actually in our world? What is the reality we're actually embedded in? That's informing us. How much of our subconscious is still playing out?
Right.
And then you move out of the personal, and then you move into the impersonal, and then it becomes another story altogether.
And here's the thing. So if we go back, and I keep wanting to go back to understanding how to move the sexual energy in a way that is for a being's highest good, and for the highest good of the beings around them. If we were to approach that piece, I think that one couldn't even step on that path, obviously, until one had done their own internal work. Now, one wouldn't have to reach perfection, I don't think, in any way, because I don't think it's even possible given all of the variables one has to dance through, But that when one has gone through that, on a physical level, that they are in tune, with their body, and that on that mental, emotional piece that they have moved through those very dark pieces of themselves. And I don't know if one moves through all of them, but as that is cleared, I think that there is an awareness and an opening, a communion with the field, the consciousness, whatever words you want to use, that you are here, to be able to use that energy in a very different way, because it's that energy is so seductive that I think very few people can move past that seductive piece.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a powerful one. I mean, you have to have your shit together before you can even think about moving past that piece.
Right. But very few people exercise any precaution in that nature whatsoever, because it is so seductive, because it is the most powerful thing they know.
Right.
So that it drives them most of the time. And I mean, I'm in a place where I can say, because of my age and the changes in my hormones, that I have a different perspective on it versus having those hormonal triggers being running through my body right now. And it's not to say that they're not there. It's just that if you're talking to any young person, what's the first thing that happens? I mean, come on, how am I going to say to a young person, well, don't follow your innermost hormonal things, which is sexual union. Right. And usually tapped into control, and most people use sexuality for control, right? Have, want, desire, need, it's a very rare being still, especially a young one, although I do think that there's a wave of young ones on the planet right now that actually know those.
Yes, I do too.
Right? So, we're sort of like bridging generations now, what we're talking about. So, but I agree. I agree, Marin. It's just like, how does any, if we were to be practical about it, it's like being able, that's what Tantra, real Tantra was feeling the sexual creative energy within oneself and using it for one's own enlightenment.
Right. And I think at some level too, that even that has been clearly co-opted.
Oh, completely. It was the first thing they did.
I know what real Tantra is. I don't even think that the word Tantra, it at least brings us on the same page so we can have a discussion. But I think at some level it's...
Right. But it's power. It's power.
Yes.
It's power. Power, and that's what happens is that people walk into the Tantra field, if you will. They walk into the energetic field of especially when you're doing Tantra. The buildup of the power force of energy within the body. And it does. And it has been co-opted. And it does almost most of the time go into seduction.
Right. But here's the thing. Here's the piece that, I've been investigating and looking into and about understanding the third piece, right? So you have a union of two people coming together, right? Mm-hmm. And so that whole thing about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, really what I think that's a reflection of is when, a male and female enter in together and then they create what's called that third energy, right? It's the third energy.
Right.
That's the whole, that's the piece.
And so, most of that energy has been given over to the false God complex.
Right. Right. So you have to have two people, Now, do these people have to be twin flames? Ideally, if you were to look at understanding how that could function in the 3D reality, that would be really easy because you are designed to operate in that way. I also feel other people can bring in that same sort of energy. They can bring in that third energy. But I'm guessing they would really have to be quite skilled to learn how to do that.
But it doesn't have to be sexual union. Okay.
No, and in fact, more often than not, it won't actually be a sexual union. It could be a look. It could be a touch. It could be, that would be the piece. Okay, that would be the piece. And so, and this is what I was trying to describe, and obviously not as well articulated earlier, was that there is a level, as you move along the scale, that, the sexual energy doesn't have to be that physical. And that the third energy can be created by just being in that field with someone. And then being responsible and that's really pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so responsibility actually equals knowing yourself, your own gnosis. It really, you can't be responsible to what you don't see. You can't be responsible to acts that you don't know where the energy is actually going, right? So it's like a dual-edged sword. It's like clearing out the space, confronting shadows, confronting possible, predators or parasites within the field, and being at a finer tuned level of that energy. I guess that's the way I would best describe it, Marin, because when it comes on, it's at the lower levels of it being seduction and power. That's why the world's in the situation it's in right now. The sexual energy has been co-opted in every way, right?
Completely.
Right. So one refines one's own energy field, and then one taps into a different type of, we can call it sexual energy, but a type of energy, right? It's much more.
I think that's it. There is a refinement to the energy. There is a purity in
right,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you know it. A lot of times we fool ourselves, or I have in the past. Like I know it, but I also assign it to those that don't hold it, which is
right.
a mistake we made in our need to have the other in our life. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yes. So as women, we want to project that upon someone else who may not be in a space to really meet one at that level. And I think that's an important piece, because also what I wanted to share is that this has been co-opted not just from a physical energetic standpoint, it's been co-opted in terms of how we've been socialized, that a woman must be in a relationship with a man, that of course the whole concept of marriage, I mean, I think that these templates, these twin flames have come in to say, you know what, we need to look at relationship in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand the relationship is with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have cleared ourselves, then we will attract someone potentially of a likeness, but that's not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
We can do all of this on our own without that relationship with someone else.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I mean, I agree with that, absolutely. And it is as you were speaking, and I think of, the longing in the pain body, the longing in each soul here, okay, is for their beloved. I mean, at some level, we're all longing for completion within ourselves, right? And it just depends on where you are in consciousness of where you perceive that lies. But also the pain body itself, because there's suffering there, okay? It's a primordial trauma. I mean, the trauma itself has kept us from finding that in many, many ways.
Yes.
It's painful.
Yeah.
And so dealing with people in every person and all the complexities of all the relationships of all, each person's own reality is complex, right? And then we put a whole bunch of people together on a planet and it's even more complex. But deep down inside, I keep finding that there's this longing, this beloved aspect that we long for.
Right.
And it is, for me, it's become the return to myself. Right? My own union with my own being.
And isn't that so beautiful? I mean, it is. It is.
Yeah, and I can feel the, it's just like I can step into that pain again. I can step into that longing space again. I can feel it because it's what I feel in the hearts of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And, I do believe, ultimately we are pulling down the veils of the false and we're finding out what happened. And so we're reclaiming that part of ourselves.
And I think for us, being able to do that in this space that we've created, I can't imagine doing that on my own. I don't know. It can't be done. And when we talked about earlier, that if a twin flame comes down here and they have 12 other components of them, maybe we've all had an opportunity to in some way connect with those pieces. And even if it weren't in the context of a twin flame, maybe it was just in the context of a soulmate, to have that support, to have that connection. Because at some level, if we are remembering again, who we are and how to move through what it is that we came here to do, having those alongside us is such a huge piece of the path. So it is so complex on so many levels because we have to do our own inner work, but I think we need to do that alongside others. Mm-hmm. And that is a very refined dance.
The template's already here. Okay, the twin flamed or the template is already here. Mm-hmm. But we're still always looking outside ourselves for that other. That's the beautiful aspect I keep, getting glimpses of, mm-hmm. is that the other creation's already being created. The templates are already in our reality. They're already here. They're beings that have already come here, that have come from other galaxies. They're here right now because something extraordinary is being created. Yeah. In a reality, in a real reality, not in, and that's the participation that I feel when we do come together. And that's why I feel like the opposing adversarial forces tried everything it could to keep us from returning to each other. But now we return to each other more complete, more whole within ourselves. And in some way, that's the thing, is like, nobody is outside of me. Everything's a piece of me. just like everything's a piece of each of us. And so how could I not, you know, that's the logical place I had to come to. How could I not love another, any other?
Absolutely. I mean, I walked, you know, just walking down the street every day. How can you not? And that's why.
Right. And yet our matrix is always throwing things at us, you know, this one's better, don't love that one, you know, how do you, and all of a sudden you get something pricked in your own emotions and you find yourself reacting to somebody, right? And so the job always comes, back to self. What's in me still that needs to be cleared? Right. That doesn't mean I have to, you know, go into agreement with what people do. I don't. But to see through all the way through with the eyes of love is, you know, is for me is the journey.
Yeah. And as an empath, it's there can be a real struggle there, because your heart just opens to everyone, you know, and finding how to navigate through that so that you don't take all of those pieces, you don't internalize all of it, so that you are balanced within, that you can move with compassion, but you also can move with awareness and wisdom.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And be able to speak your truth.
Yeah.
Not be afraid of that. You know, because I'm not going to agree with what the human race at this present moment is doing. You know, but that doesn't mean I don't, at a very deep level, comprehend how they got here. And I think that is the lifting of the veils, the revealing that's going on right now. You know, that we can see how this happened at this present level of where we are. And that, for me, has brought about the keys to compassion.
Yeah.
You know, and compassion is stepping out. I mean, there's empathy, which is the feeling body, but also the compassion is the bigger story piece, so that we don't get swallowed up in the emotions. Because I know now, if I get swallowed up in an emotion, I see how they play our emotions as humans. I see what they're doing, you know, so not to allow my emotional body to get so played that I'm in, you know, I'll internalize it in myself, but I'm pretty much not, you know, giving it out to that which wants it. Right. Yeah. So I see what they do. And it doesn't change the fact that what's out there is horrific in a lot of ways. It doesn't change the fact that I feel empathy or compassion, but I don't give my emotion to that which wants to rule me.
Right. And because there is, at some level, I've heard this discussed so often, the difference between a feeling and an emotion, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, right. So we have these feelings, these knowings essentially, but how they move through our body, how we emotionally process them and dance with them is the place that one needs to be really aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, and that takes also the clearing of the physical space of the body. Claudia, I just, you know, you're always so quiet, but we've been, you know, having conversations with, you know, if you haven't been human or you haven't been in a human body for a long time, or you only come for special missions, how the body itself has been also triggered, wired, and co-opted, right? And so it's very difficult to understand how most humans are like puppets, right? Because we are not, I always say now, avatar is not in control of my physical vessel, right? So that's another big process of the clearing, is to know your own body. That's the beautiful work that Jeffrey's doing, right? As above, so below. You know, so, you know, when there are when there are things that are triggered in the body, also to understand what's happening and work towards your own health, your own sovereignty over your own organism. So that's a whole nother aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the part I found so, as I've shared so many times with all of you, I mean, and working with women in groups of women, I mean, understanding the body, oh boy, I mean, that's so key, because this is, that's why we're here. We're here to embody that in that vessel. And if the physical body is not in a space to process that, or to be able to hold the energy, you know, you have to, if you're going to move forward, you need to hold that energy in this vessel. And if the vessel is not working, that's not going to happen. So,
yes.
You know,
yeah.
And just by the, and I watch it just in the period of a couple of days with women, just bringing awareness to certain areas of the body, understanding how that energy moves, particularly the sexual energy. I mean, whether it's through movement or dance or massage, but to just feel, you just get in the body and feel the body, not feel uncomfortable with that feeling, you know, like watching women just in a situation of learning how to massage, you know, all of these pieces come up of don't touch this piece of my body, or, oh, I don't like this, or, you know, obviously, you know, relationships or come up, and abuse comes up. I mean, there's so much that's held in the body, you know, and as a soul, we choose these bodies, but we, you know, it isn't until recently we understand that when we incarnate into this vessel, we incarnate into the all of those pieces that are part of that physical lineage that we're born into. Mm-hmm. So not only do we have to deal with whatever we come in with, we have to deal with, from a physical aspect, all of those pieces that are within that vessel and the family lines that we are born into. So it's a real struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and that's a clearing of this field. You know, really, it does come down to the body, physical matter. You know, but this is recycled matter that I'm in, right? Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, the body vessel actually has the memory of all, because it actually has been recycled through time and space. You know, every time a body is formed, it's taking it from the same matter.
You know, I've sort of known that, but I've never really thought about it along those lines.
Well, I mean, if we were to say we're stardust, that would be correct. If we were to say from dust to dust, mm-hmm. dust we shall return. So, you know, if I really think about it and analyze it, because you're bringing this up for me right now to say this, actually, by what you said, is that this vessel, this very physical form that I'm in the organic realms of matter, mother matter, mm-hmm. okay, has contact to all of matter. The vessel itself,
right?
It's been truncated. It's been,
yes.
It's yes. been messed with. It's been usurped. It's been used. It's been, you know, anything that you can possibly think of has happened in our whole creation has happened through me. At that.
That's so interesting you brought that up, because it's like there's layers upon layers upon layers. I mean, here we are, recycled stardust, and yet in this vessel, it's been templated based upon whatever those experiences were from both sides of the family, you know, when you choose that body, you know. And so, yes.
And not even just that body. I mean, take it out further. Take it back out through the templates, right? Out through the holograms. You know, right. I have mother, father in this life, but who was mother, father before? And who was before them? And who was before them? And who was before them? Mm-hmm. And where did they come from? And where did they come from? Where did they come from? Right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, you know, it takes one into the limitless field aspect of what we're really made up from. Our consciousness is really reconnecting.
Right.
The nodes that we are really reconnecting into another type of neural network, okay, that is really outside this matrix.
Yes.
And
it's so important to understand that piece. I mean, because, you know, even with my background in molecular biology and genetics, I mean, there's a reason, you know, that I study that, you know, and now, and when you see how important it is to understand that piece and how it communes and how our DNA is a receiver and an emitter of information, you know, but if that receiver is not emitting or receiving information clearly, you know, we have such responsibility here on so many levels to understand how all this works, you know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And really, and the science is really quite slow. And, you know, the unfortunate people.
Traditional science is really quite slow. What I'm so astounded by is those outside the mainstream of scientific endeavors and discoveries right now is what they've come up with, you know. And it is truly a spiritual science, right? Or a science that is spiritual. Either way, it doesn't matter. You know, so You know, I feel for people that don't understand the great exploration that's going on right now, the great depth that we've come into conscious awareness, right, through what we're going through right now. Because there's nothing's more wonderful. I mean, it's, I don't know, just like, I'll be a bunch of feelings in a moment. I'll be crying, laughing, and yawning again. But, yeah. Well, this is just absolutely spontaneously wonderful, this conversation. You know, and Marin, I you know, it's that, when the inquiring being, okay, the desire, the longing to know, right? And it keeps pushing us along this path, right? You know, it's like, what else are you just going to discover next? Right? And yet, and you know, the agreement is that we don't have to agree. And yet we know at some very deep level, we know that the fundamentals are always part of us. And honoring each other in the individual journey, it's fantastic.
It is. It is.
Word.
I was wondering when you were going to say something there. I've been tempting to call you out, but you know, I'm like, yeah, you get to say the final word.
That's a lot to process at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know what the final, you know what it came up to my consciousness is the silence. It's like allowing ourselves to sit in silence and just be.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.